What if I told you that just 6 simple words have the power to break through the toughest walls, soften the coldest hearts, and build connections that last a lifetime? Imagine for a moment being in front of someone you deeply care about, or even a stranger whose respect you wish to earn. And instead of struggling to be heard, these 6 words open a doorway to their heart. Sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? Yet, hidden within the teachings of Stoicism, within the reflections of Marcus Aurelius and the timeless wisdom of Seneca, lies the reminder that words, when aligned with truth and virtue, carry a power greater than force. Today, I'm going to tell you what those words are, but before I reveal them, I want you to step into a story that will show why they matter more than you think. And by the end of this video, not only will you know the 6 words, but you'll also understand how to use them in a way that transforms every relationship in your life. Centuries ago, a Roman soldier returned home from war. His city praised him for his victories, but when he reached his family, he was met with silence. His wife had grown distant. His children barely looked him in the eyes. He was celebrated in the streets, yet ignored in his own home. In desperation, he sought counsel from philosophers in the marketplace. One of them, a Stoic, listened quietly and then said something strange. The heart cannot be conquered with force, only with words rooted in virtue. That soldier didn't understand at first. He had been trained to lead men into battle, to command and to demand. But what he never learned was that leadership of the heart comes not from authority, but from empathy, humility, and honesty. The philosopher told him 6 words. 6 words that could restore bonds, repair wounds, and rebuild trust. And when the soldier returned home and spoke them, everything changed. The story has been retold in fragments across time, and today I want to bring its lesson into your world. Now, before we jump to the exact words, let me ask you this. Have you ever lost someone's trust? Have you ever felt a wall between you and someone you love? And no matter what you said, it never seemed enough. In moments like these, most people resort to persuasion, manipulation, or even silence, hoping time will heal. But Stoicism teaches us something entirely different, that the path to another's heart begins with aligning our words to virtue. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This is where the 6 words come in. They're not about trickery, they're not about flattery, and they're not about winning in the short term. They're about truth spoken with courage. And when you master them, you'll see how quickly coldness turns into warmth, how resistance becomes openness. The irony is that people spend years trying to learn how to influence others, through status, wealth, appearance, or charm, yet they ignore the simplest tool of all: words. Seneca reminded us, speech is the index of the mind, which means if your words are empty, people will feel it, even if you dress them up with charisma. But when your words flow from the Stoic virtues of wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, they don't just enter the ear, they enter the soul. That is why these 6 words are so powerful. They're not magical in themselves. Their magic lies in the intention behind them. The soldier I told you about discovered this truth, and centuries later, so can you. So here's what we're going to do in this video. I'm not going to reveal the 6 words immediately, because if I just gave them to you now, you might dismiss them as too simple, too obvious. Instead, I'll take you through the journey of why they matter, how Stoics like Epictetus taught us to use language with discipline, and how in your own life, these 6 words will act like a master key to unlock anyone's heart. By the time we reach the end, you'll not only know the words but feel the weight of their meaning. And when you use them, you'll never look at communication the same way again. Think for a moment about the last time you had a disagreement with someone important to you. Maybe it was a heated argument with a friend, a moment of silence with a partner, or even an unresolved tension with a coworker. In those moments, the air feels heavy, doesn't it? Words have been spoken, or worse, left unspoken. And the wall between you and the other person feels unbreakable. This is the very place where most people give up, assuming that's just how they are, or it'll never change. But the Stoics remind us that no wall is permanent. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The distance between you and another person is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of the lesson. And the tool you'll need to dismantle that wall isn't clever persuasion or forceful demands. It's 6 words that, when spoken with sincerity, shift the dynamic completely. Let's go back to the story of the Roman soldier. After hearing the philosopher's advice, he went home carrying more doubt than hope. He had commanded men in battle but felt powerless in front of his family's cold silence. He sat at the table, his armor still clinking faintly, his heart racing. And then he spoke the 6 words. At first, no one moved. His wife kept her head turned. His children stared at their plates. But slowly, something shifted. His wife's eyes began to water. His children lifted their heads, and the room softened. That night, a household broken by war began to heal. Now you might be thinking, that sounds like a fairy tale. Surely 6 words can't change so much. But here's the truth. You've seen it happen too. Think about the times when someone looked at you and said the right words at the right time. Maybe it was after you made a mistake, and someone told you something that lifted the guilt off your shoulders. Or maybe when you were struggling, and those few words gave you the courage to keep going. Words may not build bridges of stone, but they build bridges of trust. And trust, as the Stoics teach us, is the foundation of any bond. Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But when we do speak, those few words can either heal or wound. Think about leaders who inspire nations, parents who shape children, or mentors who guide students. All of them do it through carefully chosen words. 6 words may seem small, but when spoken with intent, they carry more power than an hour of empty talking. And here's the paradox. Most people will never use them because they believe influence lies in appearing strong, never admitting weakness, or always trying to win. Yet Stoicism flips that idea upside down. True strength is not in domination, but in humility. True courage is not in control, but in vulnerability. When you understand this, you realize why those 6 words pierce through the heart like an arrow. They embody humility, courage, and wisdom all at once. Let's pause and apply this to the modern world. Picture a CEO whose company is failing because employees no longer trust his leadership. He gives motivational speeches, throws bonuses, demands loyalty, but nothing works. One day, in a private meeting, he speaks 6 words to his team. And in that moment, something changes. Not because he bribed them, not because he threatened them, but because he admitted what no one expected him to. Trust, once broken, can only be rebuilt when we lower our guard. The same applies in families, friendships, and even within ourselves. How often do we silence our own heart because we are too afraid to admit what we feel? The Stoics never preached emotional suppression. They preached emotional discipline. There's a difference. Discipline means acknowledging your emotions, expressing them wisely, and never letting them rule you. These 6 words embody that very discipline. So far, I haven't revealed the words to you, and you might feel the anticipation growing. That's intentional, because just like the Roman soldier, you need to sit with the silence, with the tension, to truly understand the weight of what's coming. If I told you the words right now, you'd dismiss them as too simple. But by walking through the philosophy, the history, and the examples, you'll start to feel their true power. And when you finally hear them, you'll realize they're not just words. They're a practice, a mindset, a Stoic way of living. The soldier learned it. Leaders today still use it. And soon, you will too. But before I reveal them, let's look deeper into why they work. Not just emotionally, but psychologically and philosophically. Because when you know the why, the how becomes undeniable. Why do these 6 words carry such power? The answer lies in something both the Stoics and modern psychology agree on. The deepest human desire is to feel understood, valued, and acknowledged. Strip away wealth, status, and appearances, and you'll find that every person longs for connection. Epictetus taught, "What concerns me is not what others think of me, but what I think of myself." Yet he also reminded us that we live in a world woven together by relationships, family, friends, communities, and our duty is not only to discipline our inner life, but to engage wisely with others. The paradox is this: while Stoicism teaches self-sufficiency, it also recognizes that humans are social beings. The 6 words bridge that paradox. They don't make you dependent on others, but they allow you to connect without losing yourself. And here's the psychological truth. When spoken sincerely, these words trigger empathy, break defenses, and invite openness. They disarm hostility without surrendering dignity. That's why, across cultures and centuries, similar phrases have healed conflicts, inspired revolutions, and restored broken homes. Consider the power of vulnerability. We often think vulnerability means weakness, but Stoicism sees it differently. To the Stoic, vulnerability is not exposing every wound, but having the courage to speak truth, even when it makes you appear small. Marcus Aurelius admitted his own flaws in his private writings, reminding himself constantly not to pretend to be more than he was. That honesty, even though he was emperor, is what makes his words timeless. Now think about your own life. Have you ever met someone who always acted perfect, who never admitted mistakes? Did you trust them deeply? Probably not. But when someone looked you in the eyes and admitted their humanity, didn't you feel closer to them instantly? That is why these 6 words are so effective. They combine vulnerability with strength. They don't beg, they don't manipulate, they don't flatter. They reveal something rare: honesty. Let me give you a modern example. Imagine 2 friends who haven't spoken in years because of a betrayal. Both carry pride, both wait for the other to make the first move. Days turn to months, months to years. Then one of them finally picks up the phone and says 6 words. At first, silence, then a breath. And suddenly, the years of tension start to fade. Why? Because when we hear these 6 words, our defensive walls lower. We recognize humanity in the other person. And in that recognition, there's room for healing. This isn't theory, it's real. Psychologists who study reconciliation often find that the simplest, most direct statements are the ones that restore trust. It's not grand speeches or complicated justifications. It's a few words spoken with humility. Seneca once said, "To err is human, but to persist in error is diabolical." The 6 words acknowledge error without dwelling in shame and open the path forward. But here's the catch. These words only work if they're lived, not just spoken. If you say them casually, as a trick to get what you want, people will sense it immediately. The Stoics were very clear. Intention is everything. You cannot deceive with virtue, because virtue is not for show. It's for the soul. Marcus Aurelius advised himself daily to be simple, good, pure, serious, unpretentious, a friend of justice, God-fearing, kind, full of affection, strong for your proper work. Imagine combining that mindset with these 6 words. They become more than a phrase. They become a declaration of character, And when people hear them, they don't just believe the words, they believe you. That is why they unlock hearts. Not because of the sound of the words, but because of the soul behind them. Now I know you're wondering, what exactly are these words? When will you finally reveal them? And I will, but not yet. Not until you see the full scope of their meaning. Because if I gave them to you too early, you'd nod, maybe even smile, and then forget them by tomorrow. But if you sit with the weight of this philosophy, if you feel the anticipation, the tension, then when you finally hear them, they'll stay with you forever. You'll use them not as a tool of convenience, but as a compass for how you live and connect. In just a moment, I'll show you how the Stoics embedded this principle into their daily practice, how even the emperors of Rome relied on it, and how you can apply it to every relationship you value. And only then will I give you the 6 words that unlock anyone's heart. Picture Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world at his time. Armies moved at his command, senators bowed before him, and yet in the quiet of the night, he sat with his journal, writing not proclamations of power, but reminders of humility. He constantly warned himself against arrogance, against pride, against the illusion of superiority. Why? Because he knew that influence built on fear is fragile, but influence rooted in sincerity is eternal. In his meditations, he often wrote as if speaking to himself, "Do not imagine that if things are difficult for you, they are impossible for others. Consider that many people have faced the same trials." Hidden in those reflections is the very spirit of the 6 words. For even an emperor understood that the heart of another cannot be unlocked through authority. It can only be unlocked through authenticity. The Stoics practiced this not to gain power over others, but to live in alignment with nature, where harmony and honesty strengthen the bonds of human connection. Now imagine Seneca, a statesman constantly walking the line between serving the ruthless Emperor Nero and maintaining his own Stoic principles. He wrote letters to his friend Lucilius, and in those letters he didn't present himself as perfect. He admitted his struggles, his failures, his regrets. "I am not a wise man," he confessed, "and I will never be. But I love wisdom, and that is enough." That confession, vulnerable yet strong, shows us why words have power. They reflect the courage to stand naked before truth. Seneca understood that even in politics, where appearances meant survival, honesty built deeper loyalty than flattery. When you speak the 6 words, you carry that same courage. You're not pretending to be flawless. You're not manipulating. You're stepping into truth with a kind of strength that cannot be faked. Let's bring this closer to your life. Think of the countless conflicts that shape our modern world. Political debates where no one listens, family disputes where pride blocks forgiveness, friendships lost over small misunderstandings. Every one of these situations could shift with just 6 words. Not because they magically erase pain, but because they open the door to dialogue. They signal, "I am willing to step down from the throne of my ego. I am willing to meet you as a human, not an opponent." That is Stoicism in practice, lowering the noise of pride, raising the voice of reason. Epictetus, who was once a slave, taught his students that real freedom is not external, but internal. He said, "It is not events that disturb people, but their judgments about them." When you speak the 6 words, you suspend judgment. You invite peace. You remind the other person that you are not there to win, but to reconnect. We can even see echoes of this in leaders who transformed nations. Abraham Lincoln, for example, was famous for his humility. After victories, he avoided boasting. After defeats, he admitted responsibility. He once said in a letter, "I claim not to have controlled events, but confess plainly that events have controlled me." In moments of tension, Lincoln often used phrases that mirror the essence of the 6 words. He understood what the Stoics understood. People do not follow titles, they follow trust. And trust is born when someone dares to speak the kind of truth that most avoid. In our age of social media, where everyone tries to appear flawless, where apologies are rare and pride is celebrated, these 6 words are more radical than ever. They cut through noise, they create silence, and in that silence, hearts begin to open. You've waited patiently, and now we arrive at the heart of this entire journey. For thousands of years, philosophers, leaders, and ordinary people have struggled with the same problem. How to mend what is broken, how to rebuild trust, how to reach across walls of pride and fear. And the answer has always been simpler than we expect. The 6 words that unlock anyone's heart are these: I was wrong. I am sorry. 6 words, nothing more. But within them lives an entire philosophy of life. Think about it. When you say these words, you are admitting imperfection, you are accepting responsibility, and you are opening yourself to reconciliation. You're not shifting blame, you're not excusing, you're not trying to control. You're standing in truth, unarmed, and that is precisely why these words hold such force. The Roman soldier learned it. Marcus Aurelius practiced it. Seneca wrote it in countless forms, and now it is yours to carry. But here's the challenge. Saying these 6 words requires courage. It feels easier to avoid, to stay silent, to let relationships fade. The Stoics would call this avoidance a form of slavery. Slavery to fear, to pride, to the opinions of others. To live freely, they taught, is to face what is uncomfortable, to speak what is true, to act with virtue regardless of the outcome. When you finally learn the 6 words and dare to use them, you will feel that weight. At first, your pride will resist. Your ego will scream. But then, when you see the wall between you and someone else begin to crumble, you will know that this is not weakness. It is the purest form of strength. And this strength, once practiced, becomes second nature. It becomes who you are. We are now closer than ever to revealing the 6 words. But before I hand them to you, I want you to pause and imagine. Who in your life needs to hear them right now? Is it a friend you haven't spoken to in years? A parent who feels unappreciated? A partner you've hurt, or who has hurt you? Or maybe it's yourself. Because sometimes, the person whose heart most needs unlocking is the one beating inside your own chest. As we move into the final part of this journey, I will not only reveal the words, but show you how to use them, live them, and embody them the Stoic way. And when you do, you'll see why Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus would have nodded in agreement. Because these 6 words are not just a phrase, they are a way of life. You've waited patiently, and now we arrive at the heart of this entire journey. For thousands of years, philosophers, leaders, and ordinary people have struggled with the same problem: how to mend what is broken, how to rebuild trust, how to reach across walls of pride and fear. And the answer has always been simpler than we expect. The 6 words that unlock anyone's heart are these: I was wrong. I am sorry. 6 words, nothing more. But within them lives an entire philosophy of life. Think about it. When you say these words, you are admitting imperfection, you are accepting responsibility, and you are opening yourself to reconciliation. You're not shifting blame, you're not excusing, you're not trying to control. You're standing in truth, unarmed, and that is precisely why these words hold such force. The Roman soldier learned it. Marcus Aurelius practiced it. Seneca wrote it in countless forms, and now it is yours to carry. At first, these words may feel small, too simple perhaps, but do not confuse simplicity with weakness. In fact, simplicity is what makes them timeless. Consider how rare it is in today's world to hear someone take responsibility without excuses. Politicians blame others, companies deflect accountability, and even in personal relationships, people cling to pride rather than apologize. That is why when you speak these words sincerely, they strike like lightning. They shock because they are unexpected. They disarm because they are honest, and they heal because they show courage. The Stoics taught us that the most powerful person is the one who masters themselves. To say, "I was wrong, I am sorry," is to master the ego. It is to put virtue above vanity, truth above pride. And people feel that. They don't just hear the words, they feel the spirit behind them. But here's the key. These words only unlock hearts if they are followed by action. If you shut out, apologize today and repeat the same mistake tomorrow, your words lose weight. Seneca warned that philosophy is not about speaking, but about living. Don't explain your philosophy, he said. Embody it. When you say these 6 words, you must embody them. That means adjusting your behavior, learning from error, and striving to live more wisely. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that he would fail. He would get angry, impatient, prideful, but each day he returned to discipline, to humility, to the path of virtue. When you speak these words, you are not claiming perfection, you are claiming growth. And that is far more powerful. Because people don't connect with perfection, they connect with progress. Let's imagine some moments where you might use these 6 words. A father who was too harsh with his son sits quietly one night, then whispers, "I was wrong. I am sorry." A partner who ignored their spouse's needs finally admits the truth, "I was wrong. I am sorry." A leader who failed their team stands before them and says, "I was wrong. I am sorry." In each case, the walls begin to crumble. Not always instantly. Sometimes wounds take time to heal, but the door has been opened, and that is all you need. Because a closed heart cannot be forced open. It can only be invited. And these 6 words are the invitation. They are the key the Stoics would have recognized because they embody wisdom, knowing you were wrong, justice, admitting it, courage, speaking it, and temperance, subduing your ego. All 4 Stoic virtues in just 6 words. So here is my challenge to you. Who in your life needs to hear these words? Don't just nod along and move on to the next video. Stop, reflect, write down the names. Maybe it's someone you hurt years ago. Maybe it's someone you saw this morning. Or maybe it's yourself. Because sometimes the hardest person to forgive is the one in the mirror. If that's the case, look yourself in the eyes and say, "I was wrong. I am sorry." Feel the weight of it. Feel the release. That is self-mastery. That is Stoicism alive in you. The words are not the end. They are the beginning. The beginning of healing, of reconciliation, of deeper connections. The Roman soldier discovered it. The Stoics lived it. And now you can too. Say the 6 words. Unlock hearts. And more importantly, unlock your own